to discuss the academic side of feminism, but then it may be really difficult to restrict our thoughts only to the academic side, because ultimately what we require is the practical side, the experiential part that probably helps us apply ourselves the way we have to in society. So permit me to share the screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
So what we really require today is a kind of transformation that needs to be progressive as per the situations we experience uh, as the days pass. So when we think of feminism, we cannot but think of the past, because the political side became very important initially, and it was Mary Wollstonecraft who in fact ventured, and she moved the cards in such a way that women received the right to vote. So this happens to be the first move in feminism, and women suddenly woke up and they felt that they can also vote. So there was a great excitement on account of this. And the next stage was women started thinking a little deeply, and towards the 1960s, they felt that there should be a kind of transformation and change even in the personal lives. So political alone cannot really enhance their lifestyle, but then the personal is equally important. And therefore, they decided to kind of reconceive and understand and reconstruct the existing norms. And this is something which they understood, and that is a woman is neither weaker nor inferior by nature, but inferiorized and made gentler by cultural institutions. So they would tell us, you just stay in the kitchen, do some patchwork. That is all women need to do. And these are found in certain novels, especially Mill on the Floors by George Eliot and few others. Now, if I ask you to complete this, woman is, what would your answer be? Well, I'll give you the answer after a short time. But then there are a few factors that we need to consider. That the foremost thing is that a woman is not an undeveloped man, and therefore is in no way inferior to him. But this was not recognized by men. And we find that a woman is in fact supportive to man, and her presence would supplement and complement and in fact complete a man, and vice versa also. So a man needs to support a woman, and her enhancement is also based on his recognition. But this was not known then. And when intense study was made, it was felt that there is a man in every woman, which means if a woman is pushed into a situation where she really has to act, she does possess, or she does derive the strength of a man, the inner strength, the mental strength, in order to activate things. And only when these two elements, that is the strength of a man and the gentle feelings that a woman ought to possess, and which she in fact possessed in the past. Today, I think there is more of argument, aggression, all that has certainly interfered with lives. But then if these two, the gentle side and the stronger one, are mingled, we get the happiest results. Genius is therefore bisexual. So here we find that we need to bring in both men and women to act in such a way that we can really bring about results which can make people happy. Staying happy is something which is very vital. But when that is destroyed, we find that something has to be done about it. Now, this is how Mary Wollstonecraft conceived the idea where she felt that a woman was created to be the toy of man, his rattle, okay, and she has to amuse him always. And Virginia Woolf felt that women actually lived like bats or owls, labored like bees, and died like worms. Okay, in order to explain this, I wish to read a small a poem uh, which is which was written by Maya Angelou. And I'll just share that with you because that sums up the past. And then we can move forward to the present. Maya Angelou, the title of the poem is Woman Work. I've got children to tend, the clothes to mend, the floor to mop, the food to shop, then the chicken to fry, the baby to dry. I got company to feed, the garden to weed. I've got the shirts to press, the tots to dress, the can to cut. I got I gotta clean up this hut, then see about the sick, the cotton to pick. It just goes on. And then finally she concludes in a very sad note where she says, snow, sun, moon, you are all that I can call my own, because she was not recognized in the family and there was no support that was given, but she did everything for the family. Now, moving towards empowerment, we find how Harriet Taylor and Stuart Mill carried this forward by trying to really pave way for real transformation and to bring about social changes. And this tried to, help women take up jobs. So liberal feminism concentrated on educating women. It moved to radical feminism, where they try to really sort the problem out by going to the root of the problem and considering that patriarchy had actually destroyed many things in life. And that was the lifestyle. So may not deliberately, but then that was the pattern, and they were comfortable with that. So if a woman probably raised her voice to say something, immediately she would be silenced. And therefore, initially, the woman lost her voice. And after the struggle, and after probably when we came closer to the third wave, 1990s, it was found that people really tried to work out the problems that the women faced. And though we had crossed from the first wave to the third wave, women were puzzled. They were charged emotionally. They were single. There was a lot of divorce. And the need to transform and change the situation became the dire need of women and as well as the society. So post-feminism, as we move towards the postmodern age, we found that there was a kind of backlash on feminism because in spite of feminism, there was a question asked, what did we really achieve? We understood that we were strong. We understood that we were independent. And this actually made many of the women and families understand feminism the wrong way, because people are also interdependent, right? But when they believed they were just independent, and when they became overconfident, they felt that they can decide for themselves. And all this narrowed down the interaction within the families. The bonding was not so strong, and therefore there was a problem that the nuclear families really experienced. And then the beauty myth, only when you're very beautiful, then will you be accepted by the male society, the crowd. Women gave a lot of importance to the way they look, and all the changes came up, which was really disturbing because ultimately they did not achieve anything. And this happiness was not something which was permanent, and they couldn't inject happiness into their families because they themselves were unhappy, right? So they had to really be enlightened on certain other facts. So there was this shift from victim feminism to power feminism. And there was the superwoman burnout, which is she started presenting herself in the public realms, and she felt that she was really accomplished, which was actually true. But then she became exhausted, and she reached one point when she felt that there was no one who was real beside her. And though a woman was a superwoman, she was still a little insecure. Therefore, feminism did exist, but they felt they were still victims, and they couldn't reason out the right way, though they felt that they were really intelligent, and because of education, they were well informed. Now, though we did talk about four feminisms, the liberal feminism, radical feminism, and Marxist feminism, social Marxist feminism, try to include the idea of accepting the work done by a woman and also paying for her. Okay, so she did a lot of work, but she was not paid. So all these feminisms did proceed towards an affirmative feminism, where there was a kind of clarity that was received in society and also the mind. And then cyber feminism moved towards women who were technically now educated, and they could operate and reach out to the media and all that. And Christina Hobsbawm suggested that instead of gender feminism and the actual term feminism, why don't we replace that with equality, which can be, you know, used in such a way that it can dissolve the differences. So in today, the postmodern day talks about finds feminism where they shouldn't be feminism at all. And the gender concept must be enhanced. But even that should not probably be the focus, because we should be real men and women, and we should understand the problems and probably work together to bring about a kind of harmony. So this helps us move towards a holistic kind of empowerment. Now, this is the answer to the, there was a fill in the blank initially. To define a woman is diverse. Okay, she's multi-talented, and you have all, the things, multiple facts which a woman deals with very comfortably, very carefully, but in the process, we find that feminism has, I'm not generalizing here, but it has certainly affected people. Weren't very happy, the ego clash, people became, instead of women being assertive, they became argumentative and aggressive. Okay, so these were the negative facts of feminism, which actually caused a lot of confusion within the families. All of a sudden, if a lady gets up and says, "You are physically strong, why didn't you think of making a cup of coffee for me? Why don't you cook and get the lunch ready for the children?" Suddenly, when these aspects are shared within the family, it would destroy the peace. But if a man can understand that a woman needs support, help, and happily join hands in doing things, that is a different issue. So, trying to really get across to the family and make them believe that the woman is trying to help them out and the man should support should be done subtly, carefully, and basically out of love and concern. Only then the change can be brought about in the family and society. Okay, now the institution of marriage is actually collapsing. We are quite comfortable now, I should say, with all these concepts. And when asked the youngsters, there is no inhibition in trying to tell that we will try getting married, ma'am. If we don't like, we will divorce. It's so casual, like brushing the teeth or something like that. But then these are important values which needs to be cherished. And marriage is not for divorce. It is a challenge, and understanding and compatibility will have to be worked out, and the young minds should understand this. So feminism sometimes has failed drastically to support and to protect. So you have this phenomenal woman, and again, I would like to quickly read to you a few lines if I manage to get the piece. Yes, phenomenal woman. Uh, this is by Maya Angelou again. I'll just read to you two stanzas alone. Pretty women. See, the poem that I read earlier was about the women of the past, but now it is the woman of the day today. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the stretch of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my steps, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. And we are made to understand that the men have wondered about this mystery, but then they were not able to see that till the end, because the woman here is driven by a purpose. She's focused. She moves forward to execute a task, and she's not there to please people. Okay, she's there to do what she really wants to. And this is the self-confidence that she actually possesses. And therefore, she is an extraordinary woman, and that is phenomenal. And today we do find women like that. Okay, these are the problems. Okay, I think you can quickly have a glance at that. The plastic smiles show that, there are people who say hi and then a bye immediately. And it will be just lip deep. Okay, synthetic relationships, and they don't really help. So we find that the pride, ego, because we are accomplished, surfaces. And when that surfaces, we find that we cannot really cherish real life. Okay, now this is something which will help us understand life, and that is, if we are able to find out what God wants us to do, then we will be able to influence people the right way, continue with the healthy relationships, reasoning will be right, love will be selfless, and education, we will be instructed, or education will help us to help others, and equality will happen without making it obvious. Okay, so the relationships will be constructive ones and helpful ones. So the life and the attempt will be really very productive. So false feminism exists when we don't understand what feminism actually is. And then we have the fruitful feminism, which will try to really nullify the fake equality which exists and the pseudo reality which remains. And what we really want is not utopian feminism, which exists somewhere and which we are heading to really exercise. But then what we require is real feminism and care feminism. So today, the concept of family feminism is reintroduced. So only when the family stays together with the help of God can we really accomplish anything. So what is missing in feminism is spiritual feminism. If we have feminism and we have academically listed out so many things, we have so many feminists, we have people who are working on writing about women, and all that happens. But still, when the question is asked, are you happy? The answer is negative. So the reason behind that is definitely we have to find out space to work with God and to work through God. So what is the part of this kind of a spiritual feminism? I'll be concluding very soon. So spiritual feminism here, intellectual feminism can exist. Academic side, you can get yourself enhanced. Academic excellence is important, but during pandemic, do you think when people suffered and when women struggled, they ever thought of radical feminism, liberal feminism, cyber feminism? No, they did not. It is the inner strength of the soul that actually mattered. Okay, so feminism can be exercised by the power that you possess. And if you understand that there is power in a smile, you can change situations. There is power not when you really accomplish something and receive an award. If you can be happy and make others happy, that is also power. There's power in music, power in love, power in everything. So every step you take can really be a treasure, and you open that to enhance the richness of life. So we will understand God's plan, and everything will be a positive influence. So freedom with God will work well. Free independence with God will be a success. So the power of God alone can perfect things, because nothing has been perfected so far, in spite of all these theories. So when you theory and praxis must go together. So there is Christina Manohar who had declared this. It's a quote. What is valuable in women's experience is that it gives them the spiritual insight to criticize and reconstruct traditions. We never did this. Okay, because we depended only on our own wisdom and knowledge. So objectives today will have to be redefined. God-centered world must definitely be open to the entire universe. And this will be the redemptive kind of reasoning, which will help us to recharge and regulate life the right way. Woman is a wonder, but man is also wonderful. We'll have to join hands and destroy our ego and propagate goodwill, and our mind should create everything that is nice, and we must believe that every step is par with God, every word is par with God, every thought is par with God. So true power, I have found, is actually from above, and I'm sure if this is exercised, life will become beautiful. So shall we therefore radiate the true strength to bind people together, to comfort and construct a new world with a pleasant vision, where we understand the importance of togetherness, which will be anchored by God. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. There was a really informative introduction to the feminist movement and the nuanced ways in which it was understood and developed down the ages. I think the last topic you touched on, that is spiritual feminism, may also lead to Jamila ma'am's topic later on. But before that, let's move on to the next speaker, Steve Anna, who will be addressing feminism from the perspective of the workplace.
Thanks, Tasman, and thanks, Meghla ma'am, for this very nice, good way of introducing the whole background to it and the context. So I was invited to be the token masculine voice on the topic of feminism. So, Jobin, when he called me and I said this, I'm going to say this to everybody. Jobin, when he called me, he said, Anna, relax, there is two other eminent erudite speakers. So he spoke about Meghla ma'am, and of course, I've heard Dr. Jabila Koshi a few times. So I was a little comfortable because I'm going to be among the speaker of few. And then he said, but I asked, why me? And he said, the others were selected, but when your name was proposed, nobody said no. So we got you in. So others were selected and I wasn't eliminated. So that's how I'm in this topic. So bring your expectations of me a little lower, right? So, and as they say, first impression is the best impression. So Meghla ma'am has given that. And they also say the recency effect, the last speaker leaves the most in your memory. So I'm rightly sandwiched by Meghla ma'am and Dr. Jabila Koshi. So with that, I would just want to say that this is a sensitive topic, right? It is easy to get offended. It is easy to feel that, we are speaking from a space that we're not really experiencing what you're going through. So, the whole idea is that we would be more willing to listen and appreciate where each of us are coming from. Right. So that said, I want to talk about what does feminism in the workplace really look like. I want to start by sharing my definition of feminism. As Meghla ma'am rightly said, there is this whole continuum of feminism. I subscribe to the feminism in this way. My definition of feminism, or my definition which I subscribe to, is this. I see feminism as a movement that seeks equality of women in all aspects of life. As a movement that seeks equality of women in all aspects of life, be it economical, be it social, be it political, be it for the opportunity, etc. So that is where I'm looking at. Now, why did we need that? Because feminism is a reaction to what was happening around the world. Some of you might be familiar that opportunities were not given to women as much as it was given to men. For example, the Harvard University, after it started taking men into its university campuses, it took them 237 years before the first woman was actually admitted into the university. Now, Cambridge and Oxford were even worse. They took 270 years for the first woman to be admitted into the university, while men came in a couple of centuries earlier. Now, 2 minutes of silence to all those men who attended class for 2 centuries, right, without any women. I don't know what motivation they had to get up in the morning and go to classes. But that is how opportunity was deprived to women at one point in time. Now, that is in the Western world. So feminism is really not a Eastern or a Western idea. It is a global thing, because opportunity and treating women as equal was not a reality. Opportunities were not given. Equality was not a reality. Even in our own country, right? You have sati, you have dowry system. Even now, you have sex selective abortion, you have domestic violence. So feminism was a reaction to all of these that were happening, and it is about seeking equality equality for women in all aspects of life. Now, coming to feminism at the workplace. Now, what is feminism at the workplace? Feminism at the workplace is seeking equal opportunity for a man as equal opportunity for a woman as a man gets. Seeking equal opportunity for a woman as much as a man gets in the workplace, so that she is able to employ her talents and get rewarded in a safe working environment, and she could grow and develop. Can I repeat? Feminism at the workplace is seeking for an equal opportunity for a woman as like a man to employ her talents, to be rewarded in a safe working environment, and then to grow and develop. Now, that is what feminism at the workplace is the definition that I subscribe to. Again, there is a continuum of definitions. But now, why did we need that? Why did we seek for equality? Just like the society deprived opportunity, and I gave you some examples. Likewise, workplace was not exactly an equal opportunity place before. Women were not allowed to enter the workplace. Women even now are not sometimes paid the equal wages for doing the same job. Right. So that is a reality. For lifestyle changes that women go through, for example, they give birth to a child, or they are primary caregivers, and they have to take a break from career. And when they come back to their workplace, their career clock is rewinded disproportionately. That's still a reality. So which means in many ways, women don't get the same kind of opportunity as much as a man gets. So feminism at the workplace, seeks for it. At its core, feminism is against patriarchy, right? Patriarchy, as you and I know, is a social system which believes that men are better, men are superior, which means men automatically, because of that thinking, they have better access to decision making, they have better access to resources, they have, they are the ones who frame the ideology. And feminism at its core is against that, against patriarchy. Now, in all of this definition, please watch out two things. One, feminism in the right sense, if we understand it, is not against men, it is against patriarchy. Because there are women who subscribe to patriarchy and perpetuate patriarchy. There are, I'm sure all of you would have heard some of the other women who'd say, yeah, I mean, like, don't behave like a guy. I mean, allow the guy to come with you. The guy has to be there. Even it could be even a smaller brother, but listen to what your brother says. And they kind of teach their children that men are superior. Even women do that. And at the same time, there are men who are against patriarchy. Right? I'm not saying all men are. There are men who are against patriarchy, and there are women who still subscribe to patriarchy and perpetuate patriarchy. So the whole feminism is not against men, it is against patriarchy, number one. The second thing that you need to understand is feminism, in the right sense, is seeking equality with men, but it is not to say that women are same as men. That is actually an insult to women, to say that we are same as men, because women are different, just like my 5 fingers are different, right? But they are equal to me. I mean, I love all my 5 fingers, but they're not same, right? One is short, one is fat, one is tall. All of that is the reality. So, to say that, to kind of take feminism to an extreme, to say that feminism is against men, or to say that feminism is asking for sameness as men, is actually pushing to the extreme. So those are two things that we got to watch out for. I want to dive into what does it mean to, for feminism at the workplace. I said feminism is seeking for the equal opportunity to deploy her talents in a safe working place, to get rewarded and to grow and develop, right? Now, for that to happen, the workplace has to be a conducive environment. Now, what does conducive environment say? A lot of research says that conducive environment in the workplace is a 3-legged stool. 3 things have to happen. One is development. There has to be opportunity for a woman to get meaningful job, for a woman to be recognized, for a woman to be appreciated, for a woman to learn and grow, and a woman to feel that the pride of having contributed to something productive has to be there. That is the development aspect to it. Many organizations get that right. They are able to focus on giving meaningful job, and where there is needed, they're able to develop women. Where many organizations miss is the other 2 aspects. The second aspect, one I said is development. The second aspect is there has to be the support system for women. What do I mean by support system? The reality is that women, they do have, these lifestyle changes happen. For example, maternity. When they go on a maternity leave, now many organized sectors have rules and statutory governing them that they have to have 6 months, 3 months, or whatever it is, depending on the state and the country you're from. They kind of tell you how many months the organized sector has to give them on paid leave. Now, those are policies which has to be there, but that's still not a reality in the unorganized sector. If a woman is due, her due date is near, and she goes on her maternity leave, she actually doesn't earn, which means the support system is really not there. Women are actually primary caregivers, which means an organization has to realize that and be able to, support them with that kind of a mechanism. Some organizations even come and give creche facility. Even if they don't create the creche facility, what they do is they tie up with creche facilities and they kind of give something like a 50% compensation. As long as child is about 3 years old, you can actually use that facility. Now, those are kind of some of the support system that organization has to come alongside and be able to do it. Or as simple as giving flexible work timing for a woman who's just come back from a maternity leave because she's now a caregiver, primary caregiver for a young infant, and then to be able to give, look, you can work from home, not necessarily a 9 to 5, but ensure that the deliverables are met, but you define what your work timings. These are all policies that an organization can come out with to bring in support system. So you understand, right? Development, support system, and the last is ecosystem. The ecosystem is where a culture has to be there in the organization that is treating a woman as equal. Now, an organization can have all the development and the support system, but imagine a woman gets promoted and the water cooler gossip on that evening is, look, she got promoted because the HR was trying to fill in and achieve its diversity targets. Or a woman gets promoted and she is leading an all-male team, and all these guys go for lunch and have this guy conversation and leaving this leader who is a woman completely out. And they don't really interact with her. They don't consider her really as their boss. There are so many ways the ecosystem, in spite of the support system and the development working in place, the culture of an organization can make it very difficult for a woman to really thrive. So if you're looking for an organization or you're working in your place and you find frustration, you will invariably find that either the development for a woman is not there or the ecosystem or the support system is not in place. And that is where, it becomes very difficult for a woman to now try and be at her best and be able to give her best, employ her talents, and be rewarded equally in a safe environment, and then to be able to grow and develop. Now, that is what, that we should aim for. Now, does this organization exist? It's got a perfect development ecosystem, support system. Reality is no. It is not just not a perfect place for a woman. No organization is even a perfect place for men. Now, that is like an utopia. Now, that is what everybody has to aspire for. A responsible people leader has to aspire for. When he or she as a woman in her team has to think about, how is my development? How is my ecosystem? How is my support system? And the HR should be thinking about it. The women in the organization should think about it. The C-suite executives have to be thinking about it, because the demand for talent is just unprecedented in many, many areas. And then we're clearly missing out on 50% of our workforce if we are not really getting that in place. I'll say just that, and then probably pick if there's any other questions, in the Q&A session. My last point is this. We're increasingly living in what is called as a victim culture. Some of you might know this pioneering Indian feminist called Kamala Basan. If you've not seen her, you can go to YouTube and search for Kamala Basan. Kamala Basan starts her TED Talks, where the title is Feminism Is for All, if my memory serves me right. And she starts with 3 announcements. She starts by saying, I am a feminist, I don't hate men, and I can laugh. And the audience burst into peals of laughter, because it is typically thought that feminists are those who hate men, and feminists don't laugh. I mean, they take everything seriously, and they're just waiting for you to make one wrong move, either in action or in words, and then they're there to cut you. But what's really driving some of these thinking is, we are increasingly seeing ourselves as victim culture, not just feminism. In general, we are told to consider ourselves as victims. If you're of a particular race, see yourself as a victim. If you're part of a particular gender, of a sexual orientation, we're increasingly being a victim culture. A classic example is go to Twitter, spend 5 minutes, and you will see how people kind of get themselves into groupism, and one group versus the other, and how much I can market my victimhood depends how, equally proportions how much sympathy and how much support I get, right? That's what is happening. Now, unfortunate it will be if the Indian feminist movement, and the West, I think, has already gone there. It will be unfortunate if we kind of lose our desire for that equality. We're fighting for something which is right, that we need the liberation of women in the right sense, so that they get the equal opportunity. If that kind of moves into a victim mindset, there are people who got an agenda and they're really pushing that in to start making women feel victims. So what are some of the traits of victimhood? If I'm a part of a victim culture and women are increasingly being asked to look like that as victims, you got to resent and you got to angrily voice your view. You can't forgive. You got to harbor that hatred, that this is what happened to my mother. You know what my grandmother went through, and you know what my sister-in-law went through, and you know what happened to me when I was 4 years old. And you got to keep that vengeance with you so emotively packed, and then to be able to vent it out at every drop of a hat. And not just that, you got to find out as to who are those who are able to equally participate with you in that victim culture. You got to see who is for you and with you. And how do you know who is for you and with you? If they're equally voicing their view passionately, angrily, and loudly for everything that's got to do with what you're fighting for. If it is feminism. If it is about race, it is about race. That victimhood mindset is really picking up. Now, what happens with that? What is the challenge with that? The challenge with that is feminism is in the danger of becoming a movement that perpetuates hatred. It is in the danger of becoming a movement in many places, it has already become a movement of that perpetuates hatred. Number one. The number two thing, and very critically, is it is in disservice to feminism. You know why? In a victimhood culture, you're immediately looked at as a feminist, as a group. You get a group identity, and the individuals don't matter, the groups matter. The group matters. So it is the group that takes precedence, and individual, your view, your opinion of how you feel about it doesn't matter. You're part of a movement. As part of the promo, you'd have heard this. We are against racism, sexism, heterosexism, because there is intersection. That is exactly what you're looking for. Get all the victim groups together and see if there is one thing that is uniting them. They're all feeling like they're victims, and get them all together and fight against something. And so what happens to me individually? What difference does it make to me tomorrow when I go to my workplace where there is this boss who's looking down at me because I'm a gender? Nothing happens. But when I go and voice my view on social media, there is this 250 likes, 2000 comments, and that's all that I get. But in my day-to-day life, no difference happens. Group matters, individual experiences and individual thing is lost. So what's the solution? If you're really feeling, and it's not just, this is not my appeal only to women, this is for men and women who strongly feel that women have to have equal rights. Do not fall into this temptation to get into this victimhood mindset. They say that, for example, a huge trauma has happened in your life. For example, you met with an accident, you lost your arm. Let's say you lost your arm. And what do they say? Now they can't come and tell you, look, that didn't happen. You're all right. No, that doesn't make sense, because you have lost something. It doesn't really doesn't help you to keep telling, hey, what's so sad, poor you, sad you, unfortunate you. There are so many people in this world who have both hands, but look at you, you don't have an arm. You can't keep saying that as well. That doesn't help. Now, that is exactly what the victim story is, to make you look like a victim. Because as long as I see myself as a victim, I will want to look up to a savior who can help me from my victimhood mentality. And that is the ones who are governing the identity politics or playing that role, right? So you can't say it didn't happen. You can't constantly keep, kind of just meddling with a wound that is about to heal and constantly keep that pulsating wound raw. That again doesn't help. It is to probably start making you realize that, yes, that has happened, but what more can I do to come out of it and start looking at myself not as a victim, as someone who's still got a purpose to live, and I can move on. And if there is any way, I can actually even bring hope and hope and some kind of an encouragement to others. Now, that is where feminism has to move to. Has there been injustice in the past? Yes. Are there injustices that is still happening? Yes. But looking at yourself as a victim is really not a solution. And that is where corporate world is really probably missing it, because the group identity is strongly picking up, and that is not really going to help the individual. It is actually starting to serve the one who is holding the group identity agenda. You know what's happening? As patriarchy is about breaking away from the clutches of men, group identity is now breaking away from the clutches of men and getting very much into the clutch of the one who holds the group identity agenda. Can I just repeat it? If feminism is not careful, we break away from the shackles of the patriarchy, which believes that men have the right to decision-making resources and ideology, breaking away from the shackles and getting ourselves into the very group identity, where the group identity agenda holders, they tell you what the decision is, they tell you what the agenda is, and women again end up becoming a pawn. And that shouldn't happen. So men and women, those of us who believe in feminism, has to really watch out for in our workplace. If you see a woman being, not being treated properly, don't turn the other way around. Don't keep your mouth shut. Speak up. Stand up for women. And if you're a woman who's going through this, stand up for your rights. And that is what has to happen, and not to start looking at you as a victim, and not to even start thinking about these didn't happen, but really, purposefully engage in this. So that could be a way out for us, as we're particularly looking at, feminism in the workplace. Happy to pick all easy questions and pass all difficult questions to Dr. Jamila Koshi and to Meghla ma'am in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Stephen. I was just going to say that the concepts you explained would probably get some tough questions, but yeah, you really explained these concepts, especially about victim culture, very differently from what I've heard so far. So moving on to our third speaker, Jamila ma'am. She will be talking about the effects of religion on women's lives and its impact on patriarchy. Over to you, ma'am.
Can someone unmute her? I think she's not able to unmute herself.
Okay, so thank you very much. And can you hear me? Common is a question on the Zoom platform. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, could you lower this? Okay, it's fine.
Yes, can you see me now? Yeah,
yeah. Perfect.
Okay, so I'm glad to have had Mekhla's very, profound and very complex history of Western feminism to explain before I get into it. And I completely agree with Steve's definition of feminism. So that's great. I don't have to spend any time on that. I can just move on to the part which religion plays in this whole scenario. And it's interesting that, Mekhla said something about it's experiential, what we would see and what we experience, and that shapes our ideas about feminism. And I think if you look at it in our country, we face this all the time, right? So we face, inequality within the family. We face sons being preferred in many, many ways in our own families. We see sons having maybe property rights. We see sons being given more pocket money or a motorbike, or the women having to sort of focus on marriage and jewels and that sort of thing, even if they want to study. So there are these very clear gender things which we all experience. The father is the unquestioned head of the house, and the mother has to sometimes manipulate things in order to get her way. And this is all small fry compared to the domestic violence and sexual harassment which we all have faced, and which show us how unequal the world really is for men and women. Now, I was happy and interested to hear Mekhla ma'am's a solution which included God as this part of the solution. That's great, and I agree. But I also would like to start a step further back, because I think that religion and organized religion is often encouraging patriarchy, which sort of puts women down. So organized religion often is really the enemy of equal rights for women, and that is something which we see across religions in our country. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because we are an extremely religious nation. We see temples at every corner. In the workplace, you go to some offices and there'll be 30 pictures of gods around, right? And people do namaz 5 times a day. And Christians themselves have bells ringing, and stuff going on so many times a week. And we are a very religious people. So how does religion affect this whole men-women balance? And I think it's not always a positive. There is often an undercurrent of strong endorsement of patriarchy, which has to be challenged in a very peaceful way. And that will help us to reach somewhere in getting equal rights and equal opportunities for women. All right. So where do you see this? Okay, you see this everywhere. You see it in religious bodies. Okay, so in religious bodies, you will find that the bulk of the leaders, okay, whether the religious leaders or the organization of the religion, they are men. So the pujaris are men, the pastors are priests, or Maulvis are men. There will be an exceptional woman here or there, but the bulk of it is all men. And the texts are sort of written and interpreted by men, and the decisions are made by men. The committees are about men. There was an amusing picture once which talked about Muslim women's meeting, and they were all guys over there. that picture went viral because it was so ridiculous. So yes, men tend to dominate in religion, and they tend to set the rules. They tend to sort of make religion the way it is for men and women. And it's not just that, they strongly endorse this whole, now family is a great thing, okay? But the patriarchal system endorses family to the extent of anything else. So I have seen innumerable cases where there has been severe domestic violence, but the counselors from the church, would be stressing that you have to forgive your husband and get back. So the whole aim is to bring the family back together. The aim is not to to deal with the woman's hurts. She actually has hurts. She's not pretending to be a victim. She has been beaten and bruised. She has been robbed of money. She has been not allowed to go out of the house. She has been, her phone has been checked. There are there's no need to even talk about it. It's all over the place. So unfortunately, the most religious institutions will push this whole thing about, getting saving the marriage at any cost. And yes, even religious people prefer sons. There's no doubt about this. Even religious people prefer sons, whether it's openly taught or not. This is the practice, and we know it in all religions. The child sex ratio has been dropping, including in the Christian religion. So if the bulk of the people attending today are Christian, that doesn't mean that we are any better. We are just the same. Female feticide is happening, which means that boys are valued, girls are not. So we have to start at a very basic experiential level in our families, right? So even the whole definition of masculinity, even if you go back to the early church fathers, it included such a strong component of misogyny, all right? So even a reformer like Martin Luther said things like, the woman is the glory of the moon, but the husband is the man is the glory and reflection of the sun. So he is like the sun and she's like the moon. She reflects the light from the sun, things like that. And that is just nothing. There are others like Tertullian and all who called woman the devil's gateway and said that she deserved to be punished and deserved to have a yoke. And, you just read those horrendous early verses. They're not very much better now. They've changed a little bit, but the whole emphasis on misogyny, the devaluing and almost hatred of women is there across religions. And so we have to confront this because, as I said, religion is very, very important in shaping how we are as men and women. So I'm going to look briefly at all the religions, okay? And I'm going to focus more on my own because I think we should be extra critical of our own religion. And as I'm a Christian, I'm going to spend a lot of time on Christianity. But I want to briefly look at the other religions also. And what we see across the scriptures and across the teachings is a sort of mixture, okay? There'll be some things which are pro-women and some things which are anti-women. And we need to sort of get through this maze of teachings and understanding. So for instance, what does Hinduism say? Now, Hinduism is unique in that there are women writers of the Vedas, okay? And that's a very interesting thing. And there were women theologians long, long back. They were arguing complex theological matters. And that's something which we should be happy about. The theology itself had this whole thing about woman as Shakti, and it talked about Ardhanarishwar, with a god who is half man and half woman, one form of Shiva. And so there is this mixture of things which are positive towards women. But then also there are all these horrible negative things as well, where Manu says things all about women. And we know that the epics which have been written, the epics which are largely what people base their understanding of masculinity and femininity on, we know that the epics have a lot of sexism and control of men over women, okay? So for instance, Lakshman draws a Lakshman Rekha around Sita. Nobody questions that he has a right to do that, okay? And there are so many things like that. They mutilate Suparnaka. And that is, of course, now the thing is that there are a lot of women who are reinterpreting these passages. And so there is a movement to bring back a sort of equality. But if you look at it, there is a lot of sexism in the scriptures as well. And this is how Hinduism is a mixed bag. If you look at Islam, a lot of our Muslim friends would like to tell us that Islam is very equal. Okay, it says that men and women can be saved, men and women are supporters and partners to each other. And yes, that is true. But it also says that men are the leaders of the household. It gives men a disciplinary role over women, where they're allowed to beat, an intransigent woman, a woman who's not obedient to him. And the whole concept of, the woman's ability to count in the quorum, okay, or things like that. So obviously being present as a witness or so many things, there is a definite favoring of men. It's also interesting that Muhammad himself said that a lot of the people, the Prophet Muhammad himself said that a lot of the people that he saw in hell were women because they were disobedient to their husbands. And so that is a very thing that Muslim women should think and study about, Muslim men as well. What about Sikhism? In Sikhism, the traditions are, the scriptures seem to be more or less equal. I haven't been able to, find anything which is not equal. But yet women had a strong fight required in order to do Palki Seva, in order to sing kirtans in the assembly. And Punjab has the lowest child sex ratio, which means that whatever happens, these religious people are still, aborting their female fetuses. They value men more than women. What about Buddhism? Now, Buddhism does say that men and women both can attain nirvana, but Buddhism also made the male monk order superior to the female. Okay, so the female order followed the male order at the instance of some women disciples of Buddha, and Buddha decreed that when a woman monk came along, she had to bow and salute the male monk because he was her superior. So there are these, things of which are basically patriarchal ideas, which are there in almost every religion. Now let's go to Christianity itself. Now Christianity has this narrative, which is very interesting, where it starts off saying that men and women were created equal in the beginning. So if you look at Genesis 1, it says that men and women were created in the image of God, both created in the image of God, and they were given rulership of the world. They were told to be stewards of the world, to take care of the world together. And there was no hierarchy mentioned there. It just said, go out and rule together and get your children to follow you and, to do this together. And God says it is great, this is good. But then a few chapters later, we have this dramatic sort of explanation of how sin entered the world. Whether we take it literally or not is a different matter. But the whole story, the point of the story is that somehow human beings rebelled against God and decided to go their own way. And one of the consequences of that was that there was this gender imbalance where men start to rule over women. And that is the explanation that is given for gender imbalance throughout scripture. But then we also know that as soon as this happened, God also said that I'm going to send a savior, not in so many words, but there is a messianic prophecy soon after this happens, which sort of says that the seed of the woman will destroy Satan and will bring salvation. That was the implication. So there is this movement towards bringing back the equality right when it starts. And then we find that later, as Jesus comes, he inaugurates this kingdom where there is no male nor female, no Jew nor Greek, no slave nor free, and it's supposed to be an equal community of all believers. It's supposed to be equal for all, Dalits, Brahmins, everybody, all are supposed to be equal in God's kingdom. But then the problem is that because we still live in this sinful world, there are still inequalities existing. And some of those inequalities are present in some of the passages. So one group of Christians say that, therefore, those passages should be interpreted only as cultural remnants of the patriarchal system which came in, and we should not follow them in their extremely patriarchal view, but we should follow them in an enlightened way, give a dynamic interpretation of it so that men and women are seen as equal, because they are, because that's what Jesus came to do. And we know that that is what will happen when Jesus comes back. Now, similarly, there are other Christians who say, no, we have to see those verses literally, and therefore women should not speak in church, women should cover their heads, women should be submissive to their husbands in a one-way submission, okay, and that sort of thing. So this is the state of Christianity today. That this is how the Christian feminism is poised, okay. That there are some people who are insisting that no, we must read scripture through the lens of the whole holistic pattern of God's plan of salvation. And we see it in that view, and we know that God wants equality of all people, and therefore we should bring feminism, equal opportunities for men and women, equal opportunities for slave and free, for Dalit and Brahmin, for everybody. That is what we should work towards. Okay, so this is the pattern. This is where we are poised. Okay, so now having looked at that, I want to close with just asking you this. Having said that, what are the solutions? How do we move forwards? I hope I have explained something about how religions have often some stress towards equality of men and women, and often they have a strong misogynistic, patriarchal voice running through as well. And the Christian explanation is that happened because we live in a sin-ridden world, where one of the consequences was that man would rule over women. And unfortunately, he's doing that, okay? And that is happening all the time. So what do we do about this? Now, unfortunately, I want to just add in some things which respond to what Meghla and Steve said as well. See, the thing is that we are often fault feminists for anger, right? And we fault people for becoming victims. But I just want to say that, look, that is a phase in the evolution of people as they understand this matter, okay? Because you are often a victim in your family, in your household, in your community. You are often put down, and you are often a second-class citizen. So there is a certain amount of anger. You cannot deny that. I mean, you cannot say that you mustn't be angry. How can we say you mustn't be angry? As a psychiatrist, I know that the correct thing to do about anger is to say that, yeah, you are angry. Let's process your anger and let's deal with your anger, and then let's move forward from the anger. So let's not I feel that people are very unnecessarily unfair to women or feminists being angry, whereas they themselves are angry about so many other things, right? So Dalits get angry sometimes with the caste system. You can't blame them. They've been struggling with this oppression for years and years and years. So we have to cut them that much slack. And yes, they should not continue to be victims. They must accept that they have been victimized. But yes, as Steve also said, we must move forward from victimhood to advocacy. So the next stage in the journey is being an advocate, to speaking passionately but peacefully and serenely about this whole matter, where you have shared your anger. And I know that I have been on that journey. Okay, there were times when I was very angry, but I have moved past that, and I now and maybe most of the time to be able to speak in a non-angry voice, bringing the truth of this to everybody. What should we do next? I think it's very important. I like what Meghla shared from Christina Manohar's, what she's shared, that women and men have to reinterpret and, criticize and reinterpret tradition. And I had put that down earlier as study, okay? So women and men, you need to study this issue. Those who are more passionate about it, study it more. And because I'm more passionate about it in my family, I'm the one who has studied a lot about this. Read about it. Study about it. Study all the different theological tomes about it. Read. Make yourself a credible and, make yourself a knowledgeable person about this, so that you are able to articulate your viewpoint clearly and concisely. All right. The other thing I want all of us to do is to get credibility as women. Okay. And to do that, you need to get credibility in some other area. Okay. So we are not allowed to be pastors. But for instance, I went and did medicine, and I've done psychiatry. And now I have a lot of credibility within the church because I can speak about mental health. And I'm often able to, to interconnect mental health and spiritual issues. And that is something which pastors appreciate. So I have my own credibility as a person, as a believer, as a person in the Church of God, as a religious person, and as a woman. I have my credibility. And no one can take that from me. Whatever your rules, whatever your systematic religion says, nobody can take that from me. For instance, you can write. Nobody can stop you from writing. Go write. Write. Read, study, develop critical traditions, and write about it. Okay? If nobody gives you any other platform, that platform is still available to you. And yes, as others said, we do it peacefully. We do it serenely. We do it, as Steve said, Kamla Basin, do it with a laugh. Okay? We are not unhappy, sad people. We are strong people. We are empowered by God, and we will get this. We will get this done for our people and our nation. Perhaps we will have to wait till the Lord returns before it is fully accomplished. But that doesn't mean that we don't try now, okay? And yes, it's important to get more and more people on board, and we need to get men on board. As we said, nobody is an enemy of men. They are only enemies of the patriarchal tradition, which is unfair to both men and women. It puts an unfair burden on men, and it puts an unfair burden on women, okay? So we need to live this out with grace and courage and strength.